Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the Moondrop Chu II. This is the continuation of what was started out with the Moondrop Chu, which was an IM that almost 2 years now ago came in and kind of shocked a little bit the market by offering a very mature signature, a very unseen signature, at least at this price bracket, which was under $20. It had its issues, but overall, the reality was that it was giving us a sound signature which usually was found only on IEMs in the 70, 100, or plus even more price range. And it was offering us that signature in a nice enough package. If there was any flaw to be pointed out, was the fact that the cable was just not detachable. But besides that, you got a nice 10mm driver, which was a composite PET and titanium diaphragm. You got a decent enough shell metal. It would fit properly, no issues with the fit, and overall, like I said, the sound was very much that VDSF signature of Moondrop. So it was right up the alley for the die-hard Moondrop fans. Anyway, this is the Chu II. Comes in a very classy box by all intents and purposes. You open it up over here, okay, and the IM's set over there. You take that out, and inside there we have a little carrying case or pouch or box or whatever you want to call it, which brings the carrying case, brings some paperwork, and I'll show you now the rest of the stuff that it brings, which is the tips and the cable. This is an IM that costs $17 roughly, so we're not going to expect the world here. The cable, okay, it's got a little bit of its own life. It wasn't very difficult to wind it up in this position and have it stay like this. And the tips, surprisingly, although I ended up using KB Aero 7 tips, the tips are actually not bad. The tips, I can't really stay here and complain and say, oh no, the tips are no, the actual tips are pretty good. I did some of the listening with the stock tips initially to see how that would be, and I wasn't disappointed, to be honest. I really wasn't. Anyway, as for the IMs themselves, they've got a shell which is basically the same as the shell of the shoe, a little bit different in the overall thickness, and obviously in the faceplate design. That's the shoe there. Okay, so actually let me grab them, it's better. So that's the shoe there. This is the Chu II. So very similar, you can see, very similar. It's just the thickness that if you look carefully, you'll see it's slightly different. Okay, the thickness, and I seem to also see a slight difference in terms of how this end section here of the nozzle here somehow seems to be slightly different. There seems to be a slight increase in thickness on this one here. Okay, there's also one very big difference, which is the fact that the nozzle now is you're able to swap out the filters, so very much like the Starfield 2. Okay, I'm not going to take that out because there's no need, but you can unscrew it and swap out the filters. It didn't bring the filter, so I don't know if it was just me or if that is something that you can afterwards get separately. I'm using 07 tips, like I mentioned, and I'm using a nice HDK cable. Actually, the cable is more expensive than the IM itself. But anyway, fit is very nice. It fits really nice inside my ear, concha. It just fits beautifully. That aspect I have to already. The original Chu was the same thing, so no real issues there with the fit of the IM. So fit is nice. The tip, as I said, I used the stock tips, but I just then opted for this for a more kind of, let's say, I wanted to try and keep the tips more consistent across the board as much as possible. Okay, so that the overall graph would be more or less the graph that afterwards I'll show you in a few seconds when we get into the graph section. What more can I say? That's basically it. I mean, there's really not much more that I can say with regards to the fit. It's well built. Accessories are what you expect for the price. Fits nicely. It's got a 10mm, and this has got a magnesium, an aluminum magnesium driver, which might be somehow related to the driver that you find in the Starfield 2, or when I say related, might be of the same family. Obviously, I am expecting the driver in the Starfield 2 to be of a better quality, but that's it's got the same style of drive in terms of the diaphragm, and that's that. Anyway, what do I have here? Naturally, I've got the Chu. It was normal. I've got the LAN here because I thought it would be interesting to see how this stacked up with the LAN and with the ARIA. Okay, The line priced at around $35, so already significantly more expensive. It's twice the price of the Chu II, and that's got a beryllium composite beryllium diaphragm driver, and the Aria is an LCP driver. This is around the $65 mark. In the top row there, what do I have? I've got the SIMGOT EW100, which is I would say my first choice in terms of an IM under $100 that I usually recommend. And then I've got a few others that I also think are pretty decent IMs. The KZVX, the DFI non-switch version, okay, and the Dolce. That's around $18, that's around $19, that's about the same thing, and that's about $24. So all of them, with the exception of these two, all sit around that $20 bracket, just below or slightly above, in the case of the Dolce. Just these two are more expensive, but they are here for me to kind of try and show that the signature that these four IMs have is very similar. And to be very honest, it's to the untrained ear, I think it will be very difficult to differentiate between them, honestly. Obviously, yes, I could pick up on differences without a question. That the Chu is the bass, the one that's got the lightest bass easily, and while you notice the bass here is probably the one that's got the most bass out of all of them on the Chu II. Okay, but it's not a big difference when I compare it to the Lan or to the Aria, actually. Anyway, that's what I've got here for us today. In terms of what I used the NX7 and M15. I used as well the NX7 with the Cayenne, and I used as well a little bit the VE, the Venture Electronics 2RA with the Prime DAC. What can I say then about the sound of the Chu II? Well, it's actually interesting because Moondrop has got this very specific kind of Harman style of tuning, which is a little bit on the light side when it comes to the bass, and then it's got great mids. They've always got very, very well executed mids. Then the transition from the upper mids into the highs sometimes gets a little bit unpolished, but nothing that's dramatic. But basically they've always got this very much Harman style of tune, where you will see the differences between them being in the upper mids and highs, and how that comes across, and how ultimately the balance between the bass that is there and that upper mids and highs is done as well. I've always been a very big fan of the Aria. Okay, let me just get that out of the way there. Sorry, I've always thought that the Aria is an amazing IM. It gave us the performance of the Starfield, basically, or the KXXS, at a significant lower price. I mean, the differences that there was in terms of the sound were more than made up by the price difference. And I think the Aria still to this day is one of the better IEMs that they have made. People complained about, the highs, this and that, blah. Well, I'm going deaf, so that's not an issue for me. But seriously though, I never thought the highs were badly done. I think that a lot of the times it's down to people not trying enough tips to actually find the tip that works the best. And I have found, over trying countless tips, and still to this day I'm learning constantly, that if you don't play around with the tips, you're not going to get the best. I mean, the latest example has been the Kailua. But anyway, I found that the 07 tips on the Aria just work beautifully, or then complies. They work very, very well. Okay, and all of this to say what? I liked the way that the overall balance of the Aria sound was. It was nice. It had a good bass amount. It was clean. It wasn't very clinical, very sterile. No, it was nice. Had a nice engaging sound, good tonality, good timbre, great mids, fantastic mids, honestly. And then the perfect amount of extension. Technicalities were good. Soundstage particularly was pretty decent. And in kind of in a nutshell, that was that. When the original Chu came around, there was a lot of people saying, the Chu is better than the Aria. For me, no, I don't agree. It's way too bass light, and that balance between the bass and then the mids and the highs has been skewed more towards the mids and the highs. So it makes it sound thin. Might be more detailed, might be more to the pleasing, to the satisfaction of those that like mids and highs and like vocals. Fine, but overall, I feel that this is not as good sounding as the Aria. I mean, it's not. That's just me with my music and so on. the LAN was very much was very much a shoe with a little extra bass and a little bit extra cleanliness in the mids, in the upper mids and treble. That was basically it. Did it justify the price increase? Personally, I didn't think it did, because I kind of looked at it as more of a glorified shoe. It didn't have enough going for it for for me at least, to say, no, you got the shoe, you paid let's say $17 for it, go out now and pay $45 for this because this is worth the $45. No, it's a little bit cheaper now, but when it initially came out, I didn't think it was worthwhile, that extra, especially when at that price you had other things which were more complete overall. Enter the Chu 2. The Chu 2 is a departure from Moondrop of wanting to tune very much like they always tune, and going to fetch a sound which is more mainstream, in the sense that this has got a more widely accepted Harman tune. There's a lot more bass, but I mean a lot more bass as compared to this. And it's interesting because you see KZ with the ZVX and with the DFI going from a more traditional V-shaped signature of KZ, trying to bring that signature to become more Harman. So they are coming this way, while these ones seem to be going more towards there. So we've kind of found like a happy medium or common point here, and somehow this and this graphs so similar that you won't even believe. Honestly, when I show you the graphs in a second, you'll be very, very surprised. The way that these two graph and how similar they are, unreal. Actually, if I have to be totally fair, these 7 here, they graph very similar. And as I was saying earlier, I mean, to the untrained ear, there will be it will be hard for a person to actually distinguish between them. I would even go as far as, if it was in any way possible, I would even do a challenge if I could organize this somehow and put together a couple of people, and I would challenge even reputable reviewers. I would challenge, because I struggled. I really did, and I actually failed a lot more times than what I was expecting. And I'll be honest about it. I mean, I'm human. That very few people, if anybody, would get it right 100% all the time. I honestly do. I honestly believe in that. But anyway, that's another story. So what then is the all of this mumble jumble? What is it that I'm saying then? I'm saying that this has got a great bass, a fantastic bass, and somehow a lot of that magic that the mids, upper mids and treble that we find in the Moondrop IEMs hasn't been lost. It's still all there. They've made it a little bit more energetic, yes, to balance out better the bass that's been given, but it's all still there, and it's got a signature which very much kind of reminds you of other more mainstream Harman tuned IEMs. So it's got a signature that somehow reminds you of, like, for example, a FIO, a JD07. It kind of reminds you even of an Olina with a double damper. It kind of reminds you of, for example, a melee, but with less upper extension in the part of the melee. This has got more. It kind of reminds you of to a certain extent as well, the EW200 from Simgot. So it's actually quite interesting to see how they've tuned it in a way which is more mainstream, and I'm guessing this is to try and see if they can capture a wider audience of people interested in Moondrop products. So bass, the driver seems to be a good quality driver. The bass is clean enough. It's got good dynamics. When I listen to things that I usually like listening to find out the quality or to see where the faults are, perhaps, of the earphone, like La Belle Dame Sans Remorse from Chris Botti, 1 minute to 20 to 1 minute 40. That sax, this does it faultlessly. It's not overly pushed. It's not aggressive. Nothing. If I then listen to Swept Away from Carol Duboc as well, it's perfect. The whole dynamics of the song are well done. The bass line, everything, her voice, really well done. Nothing to be criticized there, especially when you consider then the price. What more? If I'm going to listen to something which is a little bit more, actually, the ladies not amused by Jeff Cascaro, amazing. The drum hits in the beginning of this song, fantastic. It's got all the necessary weight and impact that it should have, in my opinion. Another one, All I Need Is Love from Tim Bowman. Perfect, honestly, perfect song. Nothing to again be said in the way it reproduces it. It reproduces it. Sorry, it does it really well. If I go to Up and Up from Jeff Ryan to then get a feel for that sax, beautiful. I mean, nothing to be said there. It does it perfectly. You know, really, I was actually quite impressed because the difference between listening to just Up and Up from Jeff Ryan, from the Chu to the Chu 2, is very big. If on the Chu 2 it gets aggressive and you kind of, okay, it's getting into my ears, this does it very nicely, very nicely. From Dusk to Dawn from George Duke, that initial drum hits in the beginning of the song, does it very nicely as well. So overall, it's a very versatile, very complete, very easy to satisfy IM in terms of the way it sounds. It's not going to be kind of one genre. I don't usually listen to rock, and I even ended up listening to some rock just to see, and it even does rock perfectly. It's got enough dynamics to give rock music its necessary weight, its necessary slam. You know, it's there. If I listen to something which is more like on the EDM style, like for example, let's say Barcelona Beach from Bob Zapp, or let me see another one, acoustic, no, not acoustic, sorry. I'm trying to find here another song that I usually use, Apache from DJ Renat as well. It does it. It's got just the right amount of everything to make very much all genres sound good. Okay, fine. If you are now going to be the ultimate in wanting, you know, the details, okay, maybe there it will struggle a little bit. But when you consider this is $17 and it's offering this sort of versatility, you know what? You can't really be too demanding. You can't really start saying, oh no, but it's not doing it properly. One of the songs that I really enjoyed listening to it on was Sunrise from Larry Carlton, the live version. Phenomenal, honestly, phenomenal. It does it perfectly. I was quite surprised, to be honest. It was one of the songs that I struggled the most to tell it apart from the aria and from the LAN. Okay. Anyway, I think that basically covers it overall. Good in terms of its overall frequency reproduction. There's no areas there that are, you know, harsh, aggressive, or sibilant in anything. It's got good texture, good speed in the bass, great tonality, great timbre. The technicalities are, in my opinion, for the price, faultless. You can't really point out anything, you know. Okay, it's not the biggest soundstage in the world, but it's decent enough. Imaging is good, detail retrieval is good. I mean, for the value, I can't really put any negative aspect. It ticks all the boxes. Okay, compared to the Chu, it's a phenomenal upgrade. It's a better IM. Period. And if not for anything else, just the fact that it's more polished. It's not as aggressive. It's not so much the thinness, but it's the fact that this, when you start cranking it up, it loses its composure. While this doesn't. This kept itself very well mannered throughout. Okay, compared to the LAN. You know what? It's basically a LAN. If this two was similar already, but the difference was that this had bass, here the difference between the two of them is even less so. You know, you started noticing the difference between the LAN and the Chu. The original one was when you cranked up the volume and you saw things here losing composure and not scaling as nice. Okay, while that maintained itself proper. The same thing happens here. Okay, it's the same thing here. Compared to the aria, you notice the aria's got just a little bit less energy in the mids, upper mids, and treble as compared to this. Just a little bit less, but overall, again, very similar. I mean, extremely difficult to tell these three apart. Very difficult. Compared to the EW100, you notice it's got a little bit more bass in terms of the mids and the highs, the mids, upper mids, and highs. It's basically the same. Perhaps just a little bit more cleanliness in the upper mids and treble here than on the Chu 2. Okay, that's what I would say. Compared to the ZVX and the DFI, these two, basically the same sort of bass and presence of the bass and everything. It's just the upper mids and highs that they are just a little bit less than here. We've got just a little extra amount of detail here than what you have compared to there. Okay, and compared to the Dolce, which is the last one and the one that has the most different soundstage, what the biggest difference you notice is there's more mid bass slam there. Okay, and although it's got more energy in the mids and upper mids and treble than what you get here, the overall balance that it has kind of doesn't let you notice that as much because of that extra mid bass that you have. So, to just recap very quickly, Chu 2 better than the original Chu in my opinion, and the difference is, like I said, it keeps itself together nicely at the upper when the volume is cranked, and doesn't sound as thin as this, and ultimately as harsh, let's put it that way, although harsh might not be the ideal perfect word that I'm trying to find here. As compared to these two, they're very similar. I mean, really very, very, very similar. Ultimately, maybe just a smidge more detail here on the line than here. They're just a little bit less than here, but I mean, these three are like almost copy paste of each other. Compared to the EW 100, a little bit more detail up there, a little bit less bass than here, but again very similar. These four, they sound so similar. It's not even funny, honestly. It's not even funny how close these four are. Compared to the KZs, yes, you can pick up that they are KZs, let's put it that way, because they don't have as much extension as the Chu 2 has, but it's not again a monumental difference. And compared to the Dolce, what you notice is that Dolce's got more mid bass slam. So this great, I think it's a very smart move from Moondrop to go away from its more traditional clinical sounding, let's say Harman style of tune, give it a bit more bass, a little bit more guts, make it way more interesting. And spoiler alert, I'll be very honest with you, I like this better than the Starfield 2. I think that summarizes very well what I think about the Chu 2. All right. Anyway, guys, I'll show you another graphs and we'll wrap it up. All right. Take care. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the Moondrop Chu. So this is the graph of the Moondrop Chu using the stock tip. As you can see, a nice thick emphasis on the sub bass, mid bass. I mean, it's well executed. Practically no bleeding to the mids. Nice slow piano gain, peaking at around 3K. Roughly everything stays within a 10 dB window. A couple of related peak and then some extension past 10K. I measured it with the stock tips. And I also measured it with the tips that I then ultimately did most of the listening to, which was with the KB 07 tips. And let me just align it there better. There we go. And with the KB 07 tips, I just preferred it overall, just because it gave me a little bit extra kind of space of sensation of sounds of soundstage. That was all. So I did most of the listening then with the KB 07 tips, okay? So that's the tip I'm going to leave. Sorry. Now, first one that I'm going to show you is obviously compared to the Chu, and comparing it with the Chu also with the KB 07 tip. And you can see straight away the difference is monumental. In terms of the bass, we're talking a good solid, if I have to try to make the just I would say a good solid 4-5 dBs difference, very noticeable. Okay, the way the piano gain is basically the same, not much difference, and then the rest is kind of similarish. There's not too much in there, but here you notice it straight away. Now what you do notice is, because of this balance between the balance between the bass and the mids is one on the Chu 2. On the stock Chu, it's completely different. It's more skewed into the mids, and so it makes it sound thinner. It might be, you could consider it more audiophile correct. I'm not going to argue with that, but it sounds thinner, and especially when you start cranking up the volume, it doesn't scale as nice. So that's okay. Put that back on there. Number 12. That's the EW. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. Now number 13. That's the Simgot, the EW 100, also with the 07 tips. very similar for the most part in the mids, upper mids, and treble. Very similar. Just more sensation of space, of cleanliness up top, like I was saying, and just a smidge less bass. The bass, I would say you notice more this difference than what you do actually this difference here. Okay, you do notice there's a little bit extra warmth, yes, but I felt that I could pick up on more openness up top here. But again, it was with very carefully listening, and I had to choose my songs wisely. All right. So that's the SIMGOT. Number 15 now is the Aria, also using an 07 tip. And again, a lot of similarities. Less energy, but that less energy is kind of balanced with what you have in terms of the bass as well. So much like on the Chu 2, you look at the minimum, you look at the maximum, and they're basically at the same point. When you do the same thing with the Aria, you look at the minimum and you look at the maximum, and they're both at the same point. Okay, there's no difference there. Aria, a little bit more as well in terms of its sound stage, a little bit more sensation of air, of space, very much like on the SIMGOT, the same thing. But otherwise, very, very similar. Very, very, very similar. Okay, number 16, this is the Dolce. The Dolce, straight away what you do notice is, although you can see that they graph very similar, just a little bit extra energy there, the Dolce's got more mid bass. Okay, and you can pick up on the Dolce quite easily because of that. But ultimately the Dolce does sound good. It's not that the Dolce sounds bad. No, definitely not. And especially when you consider its price point as well. I mean, it sounds fine. The Moondrop, I think, just edges out the Dolce by being just a little bit extra polished. That's all. Just a little bit extra polished. Not having as much mid bass makes everything up top just sound that little extra cleaner. That little extra. There's more twinklies and sparklies. All right. That's out. Compared now to the two KZs. First, the ZVX, and a little bit less bass in the ZVX than on the Moondrop, but not really noticeable in terms of when you hear it. Less details up top, definitely. Compared to the DFI, the non-switch, this was the surprise. Actually, let me change the color here so you guys can see it better. The DFI, this was like, I mean, I would consider this up to, if I was to look at this, I would say up to 7K, it's the same IEM. And when you actually listen to it, you notice it's very, very similar, just that there's a little bit extra cleanliness and detail up top on the Moondrop, but otherwise very, very similar. That's why I said it seems like Moondrop is going towards the kind of tuning of KZ, while KZ is coming down, well, not coming down, but coming the opposite way in terms of wanting to tune more like Moondrop. Okay, and then finally the LAN, and I've got here, yeah, the LAN number 20. There we go. And the LAN, again, very, very similar in terms of the upper mids and mids, upper mids and treble, very similar. More sensation of space, a little bit more technical capability on the LAN side, a little bit less bass, not as noticeable as what the graph would make you think. Yes, there is more bass on the Chu 2, but it's not as much as this here, as what the graph shows. So just to put all of them together so you guys can see how similar they are. So that's the LAN. This is the, I'm just going to put 1KZ. That's the DFI. This is the Aria going up now. Okay. This is, where is it now? There we go. The SIMGOT, the SIMGOT, the Aria, the Aria, and the LAN, they are almost identical. I mean, it's actually it's uncanny as actually how similar they are. If I just take them out quickly, look at that. That's the Aria, the LAN, and the SIMGOT. They are almost identical. But like I was saying, we have got here the others. these they look the same. They look like the same thing. You know, this honestly, just the area here a little bit there. You notice a little bit of a difference. Otherwise, compared to the others, the base difference here is not as pronounced as what you would think. Oh, and yes, I was forgetting the Dolce. The Dolce is the other one that will stand out a little bit more because of the fact it's got this mid bass and it's got a little bit extra energy up top. But otherwise, I mean, guys, seriously, when I was saying that it's difficult to tell them apart, it's difficult. It's not easy. In conclusion, do I rec the Chu 2? Definitely. I mean, you can't go wrong. For the 17 bucks that it costs, you can't go wrong. Seriously, it's a very nicely tuned IM. Go for it. Go for it. It's a lot of fun. I was thumbs up. Honestly, thumbs up. Anyway, as always, like and subscribe. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, you take care now. Bye bye.